to tell the truth, or does the witness seem to evade the questions or argue with the lawyers? Does the witness's age or maturity affect how you judge his or her testimony? Does the witness have any bias or prejudice or any personal interest in how this case is decided? Have there been any promises, threats, suggestions, or other influences that affect how the witness testifies? In general, does the witness have any special reason to tell the truth or any special reason to lie? All in all, how reasonable does the witness's testimony seem when you think about all of the other evidence in the case? When it's time for you to decide the case, you're only allowed to consider the evidence that was admitted in the case. Evidence includes only the sworn testimony of witnesses, the exhibits admitted into evidence, and anything else I tell you to consider as evidence. The questions the lawyers ask are not evidence. Only the answers are evidence. You should not think that something is true just because one of the lawyers asks questions that assume or suggest that it is. I may ask some of the witnesses questions myself. These questions are not meant to reflect my opinion about the evidence. If I ask questions, my only reason would be to ask about things that may have not been fully explored. I usually assume that if I don't understand something that a witness is saying, that one of the jurors might be sharing that confusion. So if you can't hear something that is being said or presented, or if you can't see or hear a witness, please raise your hand immediately. All right. During the trial, the lawyers may object to certain questions or statements made by the other lawyers or witnesses. I'll rule on these objections according to the law. My rulings for or against one side or the other are not meant to reflect my opinions about the facts of the case. Sometimes the lawyers and I will have discussions out of your hearing. Also, while you're in the jury room, I might have to take care of other matters that have nothing to do with this case. Pay attention. Do not pay attention to those interruptions. You must not discuss the case with anyone, including your family or friends. You must not even discuss it with the other jurors until the time comes for you to decide the case. When it's time for you to decide the case, I'll send you to the jury room for that purpose. You're in 2 different jury rooms right now, but you'll obviously be in one jury room when there's 12 of you deliberating. When it's time for you to decide the case, I'll send you to the jury room for that purpose. Then you should discuss the case amongst yourselves, but only in the jury room and only when all the jurors are there. You must not talk to the defendant, the lawyers, the witnesses, or anyone who may be connected to the case. You might see one of the lawyers in the hallway and they won't even say good morning to you. There's a reason for that. This means that you may not speak to these individuals, even if it has nothing to do with this case. You should be very cautious about speaking to people because you may inadvertently speak to someone connected to this case. This restriction is necessary to avoid even the appearance of any improper conduct on any person's part. If anyone tries to discuss the case with you or in your presence, tell them to stop. Explain that you are a juror and you're not allowed to discuss the case. If they continue, leave. Report the incident to court staff as soon as you return to court. When the trial is over, these restrictions no longer apply. When the trial is over, you may, if you wish, discuss the case with anyone. Please wear your badges the entire time you're in the courthouse. All right? During the trial, do not read, listen to, or watch any news reports about the case. Under the law, the evidence you must consider to decide the case must meet certain standards. For example, witnesses must swear to tell the truth, and the lawyers must be able to cross-examine them. Because news reports do not have to meet these standards, they could give you incorrect or misleading information that might unfairly favor one side. So to be fair to both sides, you must follow this instruction. The restrictions I'm about to describe are meant to ensure that the parties get a fair trial. In our judicial system, it's crucial that jurors are not influenced by anything or anyone outside the courtroom. Under the law, the evidence you must consider has to meet certain standards. For example, witnesses must swear to tell the truth, and the lawyers must be able to cross-examine them. Because information obtained outside the courtroom doesn't have these safeguards, it could give you incorrect or misleading information that might unfairly favor one side or another. These restrictions start now and continue until I discharge you from jury service. It's your duty as a juror to decide this case based solely on the evidence you see and hear in this courtroom. You must not consider information that comes from anywhere else. This means that until you deliver your verdict, you must not read, watch, listen to, or receive any information, including opinions or commentary about the case, whether in newspapers, on television, the radio, the internet, or on social media platforms. You also must not research any aspect of the case during the trial. This means research using a cellular phone, computer, or other electronic device to search the internet, as well as research with traditional sources like dictionaries, reference manuals, newspapers, or magazines. You must not investigate the case on your own or conduct any experiments concerning the case, including investigation or experiments using the internet, cellular phones, computers, or other electronic devices. You must not visit the scene of any event at issue in this trial. If it's necessary for you to view the scene, the court staff will take you there as a group under court supervision. You must not consider as evidence any personal knowledge you have of the scene. You must not share any information about the case by any means, including cellular phones or social media. This means that even if you're not discussing the case with someone else, you may not post any information about the case on social media websites or any other matter. If you discover that a juror has violated my instructions, please report it to my staff immediately. You may take notes during the trial if you wish, but of course you don't have to. If you do take notes, you should be careful that it doesn't distract you from paying attention to all the evidence. Sometimes people are taking notes and they don't hear the next question and answer. When you go to the jury room to decide your verdict, you may use your notes to help you remember what happened in the courtroom. If you take notes, do not let anyone except the other jurors see them during deliberations. You must give them to my clerk when you leave each evening. Your notes will not be examined by anyone, and when your jury service concludes, your notes will be collected and destroyed. At this point, I always like to tell jurors it's possible to replay a witness's testimony upon your request. We have our IT department come up. We're a videotaped courtroom, so the witness's testimony is being videotaped. I'd like to tell you this caveat. You would be required to hear the entire witness's testimony, not just the portion of interest. You can't all fast forward to a certain part and all yell, aha. Okay, it's the only way it's fair to both sides. If you rehear a witness's testimony, you have to hear the entire thing, right? There is more than one defendant involved in this matter. You should consider only the evidence presented in this defendant's trial. Each is entitled to have his or her case decided on the evidence and the law that applies to him or her. You can see that we've chosen a jury of 17. After you've heard all the evidence in my instructions, we'll draw lots to decide which of you will be dismissed to form a jury of 12. Okay, there's 17 of you because life happens, all right? But I did order you all last night to stay healthy, so I hope you're going to follow that order. All right. Possible penalty should not influence your decision. If you find the defendant guilty, it is my duty to fix the penalty within the limits provided by law. I'll definitely be giving you more instructions during the trial. After all the evidence has been presented, you'll hear the lawyer's closing arguments. Following the closing arguments, I'll give you additional instructions about the rules of law that apply to this case. You should consider all of my instructions as a connected series. Taken all together, they are the law you must follow. After my final instructions, you'll go to the jury room to decide on your verdict. A verdict must be unanimous. That means each juror must agree on it, and it must reflect the individual decision of each juror. It's important for you to maintain an open mind and not make a decision about anything in this case until you go to the jury room to decide the case. You must not let bias, prejudice, or public opinion influence your decision. Each of us may have biases or perceptions about other people based on stereotypes. We may be aware of some of our biases, though we do not express them. We may not be fully aware of some of our other biases. Take the time you need to test what might be automatic or instinctive judgments and to reflect carefully about the evidence. I caution you again to avoid reaching conclusions that may have been unintentionally influenced by stereotypes. You must reach your own conclusions about this case individually, but you should do so only after listening to and considering the opinions of the other jurors who may have different backgrounds and perspectives from yours. I think, did everyone fill out a menu for lunch this morning? I guess I didn't ask my staff whether there were any special dietary needs. Those could be accommodated by tomorrow, but maybe not today. So everybody filled that out. All right. Okay, so now we're going to hear openings. And as I said earlier, openings are not evidence. They're how each side sees the case. Okay? Question?
Good morning, everybody. I want to introduce you to Anna St. Juliana, Madison Baldwin, Tate Muir, and Justin Schilling. They died on November the 30th of 2021. They weren't in a car crash. They weren't sick. They were murdered in an act of terror committed by Jennifer Crumbley's 15-year-old son. Jennifer Crumbley didn't pull the trigger that day, but she is responsible for those deaths. These kids were gunned down inside Oxford High School with this gun. It's a Sig Sauer 9mm handgun purchased 4 days before the shooting by James Crumbley, Jennifer's husband and father of the school shooter. This was a purchase celebrated by Jennifer on Instagram. These are her words. This is her post. Mom and son day testing out his new Christmas present. My first time shooting a 9mm. I hit the bullseye. The evidence will prove that by the time this gun was bought, the school shooter was in a downward spiral that had begun months before. The evidence will also show you that Jennifer Crumbley was aware of that. Despite her knowledge of his deteriorating mental crisis, despite her knowledge of his growing social isolation, despite the fact that it is illegal for a 15-year-old to walk into a gun store and walk out with a handgun by himself, this gun was gifted. You will also learn that despite all of that background, this firearm was not secured in a way to prevent her son from gaining access to it. The evidence will also prove to you that even with all of that, on November the 30th, Jennifer Crumbley was still given the opportunity to prevent these murders from ever happening. Instead, she chose to do nothing. This drawing, this math worksheet, was sent to her November the 30th, 2021 at 9:30 in the morning. That's more than 3 hours before the first shot was fired. These writings, that drawing, created by her son. She was sent this by her son's school counselor when he requested an immediate meeting with her at the school that day. He requested that meeting because this drawing, those words, suggest both weapon and injury, even to someone with only limited knowledge of the shooter. Apparently, that raised an alarm with Jennifer Crumbley because she did go to the meeting with her husband, but before she did, she privately communicated her own concern with her husband. This will be admitted in evidence throughout the trial. This is a portion of a Facebook Messenger thread from Jennifer to James Crumbley. Jennifer words in blue. Emergency, November 30th, 2021, 9:35 a.m. Then she sent the picture to James. His response, my God, WTF. And then he wrote back about the vet. He was at their barn, worried about their horse. Jennifer's response, he said he was distraught about last night. And then, I'm very concerned, headed to his school. That's at 10:12 a.m. Yet, despite their private concerns, the evidence presented in this trial will show to you that that meeting at the school was nothing like that school counselor or the dean of students who sat in on a meeting had ever experienced before. Those two individuals, even with their limited knowledge of that drawing, had expected the defendant or her husband to take their son home and set an appointment with a mental health professional. But they didn't. You see, you will learn that these kind of meetings, when they occur with parents, can last an hour or longer. This one was abruptly ended by Jennifer Crumbley after just over 11 minutes. And then she left. You see, this drawing alarmed everyone who saw it, including those who only knew the Crumbleys in limited settings, or even to those who had never met their son before. The two people in the world with all of the information, all of the background, to put this drawing into context were James and Jennifer Crumbley. And you will learn that in that meeting, they didn't share any of it. They didn't say anything about the fact that That firearm was identical to the 6-hour 9mm, identical. They didn't mention how that gun was stored. They didn't mention anything about his increased mental distress. You'll learn that after the meeting when they left, they didn't embrace him. You'll learn that their home is just down the road from the Oxford High School. They didn't stop by the house to look for the gun. You'll learn never once did they ask their son, where's the gun? They did nothing. They didn't do any number of tragically small and easy things that would have prevented all of this from happening. One thing will present itself during this trial is just how senseless November 30th was. And that's because of all of the easy, ordinary things for someone to do that nobody did. What I just outlined to you is a snapshot of the evidence that will be presented in this case. You will hear the facts and the evidence from the witnesses. You'll hear from between 20 and 25 of those witnesses. You're going to see over 400 exhibits. You're going to hear from witnesses who were in law enforcement. You're going to hear from individuals who work for Oxford High School. You're going to hear from people who knew Jennifer Crumbley in social situations and those who worked with Jennifer Crumbley. You're going to hear from victims in this case as well, those who were inside the school November the 30th. You're going to learn a little bit about the scope of the investigation. You'll learn that during this trial, the defendant's cell phone, her husband's cell phone, and their son's cell phone were seized. They were all forensically analyzed. Through all of that data received, in addition to data obtained through cell phone towers, social media search warrants, through information received through banking records, GPS pings, from gun ranges, all this information will be presented to you, and you'll be able to obtain a digital footprint of the Crumbley family. And you'll get an idea, you'll get a view into the Crumbley life in the days, the weeks, the months preceding the shooting. You're also going to learn a little bit about the aftermath of the shooting. Specifically, you're going to see a pattern emerge in Jennifer Crumbley after the shooting on November 30th. That pattern will include and show you that she immediately began to downplay and downright lie about her level of knowledge of her son and that weapon in that drawing on November the 30th. This pattern will continue up until the time that she and her husband are found hiding from the police in Detroit. This pattern will show you that her first instinct was to lie, her second was to run. Now, the evidence will show you that she didn't pull the trigger, but she's responsible. But there is no claim that she gifted that firearm to her son knowing he was going to commit the attack. There's no claim that she wanted him to commit the attack. So how can she be held responsible when her son pulled the trigger? And the answer is, she's not charged with murder. She's charged with involuntary manslaughter. You see, murder it's an intentional killing. Involuntary manslaughter, by definition, is unintentional. It's rooted in negligence. You've heard Judge Matthews tell you that every crime is made up of something called elements. This is no exception. You're going to learn that involuntary manslaughter is committed when someone's acts or their failures to act or their failures to perform their legal duty were grossly negligent, and that gross negligence was a cause of death. A cause of death, not the cause of death. And that's very important because, as you've heard, and you'll hear it again and again in this trial, that in a case such as this, when somebody else was a cause of death, the person who was grossly negligent can and still will be held responsible. That is, if the person who pulled the trigger, if the shooter in this case, his act was reasonably foreseeable to the defendant. To the defendant, specific to her, not to everybody else in the world, not to a stranger, not to a teacher, but to his mother, one of the two people in the world who raised him, who lived with him for 15 years, one of the two people in the world who had all the information necessary to put that drawing into context. So what's gross negligence? You will learn that it is a willful disregard of danger. Gross negligence is when you could use ordinary care, just ordinary care, to avoid a known danger, and you don't, even though it is apparent that serious injury could occur. And that's what this case is about. It's about Jennifer Crumbley's willful disregard of the danger that she knew of. That's why we're here. We're not here to talk about good parenting or bad parenting. It's not illegal to be a bad parent. We're not here to put restrictions on gun owners. That's not our job. That's not your job. That's for lawmakers. We're not here to talk about who else might be culpable or who else you think shared some blame. You will learn about the meeting on November the 30th. You may not like the fact that neither the school counselor nor the dean of students searched the school shooter's backpack. That's okay. That's okay. Because that does not mitigate Jennifer Crumbley's culpability. You're going to learn a whole lot about James Crumbley and their son. But James, he's not on trial today. He has another trial in front of another jury. Their son, his case is over. He's already been charged and convicted and sentenced for terrorism causing death and first-degree murder. Today is Jennifer's turn to stand trial, and you will evaluate the evidence as it pertains to her and her only. We're here because when Jennifer looked at this drawing, she didn't look at it the way a stranger would. When she looked at this drawing, she looked at it knowing the context and the origin. And when someone with that kind of information looks at this, the unimaginable becomes predictable. It becomes reasonably foreseeable. That's why, even though she didn't pull the trigger on November the 30th, she's responsible for those deaths. I ask that during this trial, you listen to the testimony, you review the evidence, and you follow the law. If you do that, you will undoubtedly reach a fair and just verdict. If you do that, you will find this defendant guilty as charged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. Ms. Smith, would you like to make an opening?
I would, thank you. Your Honor, is it okay if I just move this?
Oh, you can move it anywhere you want. There's a lot of stuff. There's cords and stuff, so
I'm sorry,
don't
Sean,
trip.
can you just help me? I'm gonna pull it just forward,
Watch this blue cord right
and
here.
I'm gonna keep it to the side because I don't need it.
Okay,
I just have a few notes. on it.
sure, good.
What's wrong? Sorry, Judge, just trying to get
You're
this. Okay. Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
On my way to court today, I blasted Taylor Swift to warm up my voice and calm my nerves. And there was a line in one of her songs that summarized what this case is about. Band-Aids don't stop bullet holes. And that's what this case is about. It's about the prosecution attempting to put a Band-Aid on problems that can't be fixed with a Band-Aid. The prosecution has charged Jennifer Crumbley with involuntary manslaughter in an effort to make the community feel better, in an effort to make people feel like someone is being held responsible, in an effort to send a message to gun owners, and none of those problems will be solved by charging Jennifer Crumbley with involuntary manslaughter. It's the same effect as when your child comes to you with a boo-boo and you give them a Band-Aid that they put on that doesn't take away the pain and can't undo what's happened to them. And in this case, a Band-Aid will never bring back the lives that were lost by Hannah, Justin, Tate, and Madison Baldwin. And the evidence in this case is absolutely horrific. Much of the evidence is going to make you sick and disgusted and scare you, traumatize you, and quite frankly, there's no reason the evidence needs to be shown. Mrs. Crumbley, myself, everyone in this courtroom agrees that on November 30th, 2021, the worst possible thing happened when Ethan Crumbley used a gun and terrorized the Oxford High School. So as you are watching the evidence, I ask you to keep in mind that much of what the prosecution is going to show you is going to alarm you and disgust you and be horrifically sad and tragic. But that evidence is about about the shooter. And in this case, we have agreed to call Jennifer Crumbley's son the shooter because he is the shooter and he is the one, as you will see from the evidence, who was responsible for the tragedy that unfolded on November 30th of 2021. Prior to November 30th, Jennifer Crumbley was the mother to a 15-year-old son, and she did not have it on her radar in any way that there was any mental disturbance, that her son would ever take a gun into a school, that her son would ever shoot people. The evidence at trial is going to show you that Jennifer Crumbley did the best she could as a mother to a child who grew up into a teenager and had no way to know what was going to happen. Jennifer Crumbley raised a son that she took to soccer practice, basketball, bowling. She's the kind of mother who, when a mole on his back changed color, a 1 millimeter mole, she took him to urgent care. She's the kind of mother who's texting her husband, who is at home, working from home. Where is Ethan? Where is Ethan? Where is Ethan? At 3:14 in the afternoon, getting texts back saying, Ethan gets home at 3:16, what's your problem? And she keeps texting, where is he? Where is he? You will see that if anything, Jennifer Crumbley was a hyper-vigilant mother who cared more about her son than anything in the world. Jennifer Crumbley is not a perfect parent, and we don't claim that she is. But what the evidence is going to show in this case is that the prosecution has very selectively pulled out slivers of evidence from a forest of trees to try to convince you that there was something wrong with Ethan and Jennifer Crumbley, as his mom, should have known. And at the end of the day, these slivers of evidence that are going to be presented to you will have no context and no explanation, and the defense will agree that on their face, it looks bad. But like any of you who look back at text messages sent a year ago, they may look bad without context and explanation. And so we would ask that you reserve any judgment on these slivers of evidence until the defense presents evidence itself, and we will be presenting evidence in this case to show the context and what was truly happening on these days that the prosecution is going to try to make you believe something more was happening. By way of example, the prosecution has one day where they claim Ethan needed help and Jennifer Crumbley was out with her horse. James Crumbley was with her at the barn. They had just gotten a new horse. Ethan is 15 years old at home, claiming there's a demon in the house, there's something going on, and the prosecution is going to try to use this one little point in time to convince you that Jennifer Crumbley was somehow neglecting her son. Much of the evidence in this trial is also going to center around James Crumbley, who is not on trial in this case. He has a separate trial, as Mr. Keese told you. You're going to hear evidence that James Crumbley and Ethan Crumbley liked guns. They had 3 guns, 2 guns that were purchased earlier in 2021, and a gun that was purchased at a Black Friday sale the day after Thanksgiving in 2021. You are going to hear evidence that James and Ethan went to the shooting range often, that James was responsible for storing the guns, and to be quite frank, Jennifer Crumbley didn't know anything about guns. Jennifer Crumbley, you will hear evidence, she went to the shooting range one time with James and the shooter, and she went a second time after the gun was bought. She was attempting to find a way to spend time with her son, who had just lost a dog, his friend had moved away from him. She's trying to find a way to connect to him. But on that day, when Jennifer Crumbley went to the shooting range, you will hear evidence that she didn't even know where the gun was or how to put it in the car. She had her husband prepare the gun to take it to the range. He had hid the gun in the bedroom of their home. The gun had a cable lock, a trigger lock in place. James Crumbley had the key to the trigger lock that kept the gun secure. James Crumbley used the trigger lock key, took the cable lock off, put the gun in the back of Miss Crumbley's car. Mrs. Crumbley simply drove to the gun range. You will see video of their experience at the gun range, and you will see that the shooter is the one showing Mrs. Crumbley how to use the gun at the range. And when they're done at the range, the gun was placed back in the back seat of the car, not back seat, but the back of an SUV. And Jennifer Crumbley drove home, and not being responsible for storing the gun and not even knowing where the gun specifically was placed, Jennifer Crumbley left the gun locked in the trunk, the back part of her SUV. And James Crumbley was responsible for getting the gun out, putting the trigger lock back on, storing the gun, and Mrs. Crumbley had nothing to do with that part of what happened. Over the next couple of days, this is right after Thanksgiving, the family is picking out their Christmas tree, talking about Christmas presents. There was certainly some sadness in the shooter's life, but nothing that would have amounted to any reason to believe he's going to shoot people or commit a school shooting. You will hear testimony that on the day of the shooting, Jennifer Crumbley went to work. She is essentially the breadwinner at this time. Mr. Crumbley was in between jobs. He's about to get a job offer. Mrs. Crumbley is trying to keep the household finances up. She's at work, and she finds out through an email and text message that her son has drawn this alarming drawing the prosecution put on the screen. Jennifer freaks out when she sees the drawing. You will see the text messages that show she's urgently texting her husband, emergency, call me now, and she races out of work and goes to the school. Upon arriving at the school, she meets with Sean Hopkins, the school counselor. She meets with Nick Ejak, the school principal, and she meets with James Crumbley and the shooter. And they are all in a room together where the shooter explains why he has put together this drawing and what the drawing means. The family and the school talk about how a counselor would be a good idea for the shooter to get into some kind of counseling. The meeting is not nearly as severe as Mrs. Crumbley was initially expecting. Trained professionals at the school who evaluate children represent that the shooter is of no risk to anyone and they allow him to stay in school. The testimony will show this is not a situation where Jennifer Crumbley refused to take her child from the school. She was provided the option of take him home or leave him here. The shooter struggled when they had online school during COVID. It caused him great anxiety to miss school, and he wanted to stay that day. The school was fine with it. Mrs. Crumbley did leave the school and left the shooter at the school, not knowing he was going to become the shooter within the next few hours. Jennifer Crumbley, the evidence is going to show you, returns to work, and suddenly there is news that there's an open shooter at Oxford. Jennifer Crumbley, it's not even on her radar that her son would be the one with the gun doing anything. Her immediate concern is that her son may be hurt. As she is driving to the school as fast as she can, she has conversations with her husband and becomes aware that the gun at their house is missing. And in Jennifer Crumbley's mind, and you will hear evidence of this, she believes that perhaps her son has done something stupid, like taken the gun and shot it in the air or done something. She knows he's still alive and believes that it's going to be okay. Whatever's happened, they can cross that bridge. A little bit later, there's more conversations, and Mrs. Crumbley becomes concerned that the shooter is actually attempting suicide. And Jennifer Crumbley texts her son, "Ethan, don't do it." It still has not crossed her mind that he would ever shoot another person. Ultimately, Jennifer and James Crumbley are called to the substation where they learn that their son has become a school shooter and has shot people and that there are fatalities. Jennifer Crumbley will tell you she still could not believe that was true and went into a complete state of shock and despair and stress and not knowing realizing her life and everyone's life was going to change. And her initial comments are about how could her son have ruined so many lives that day. Jennifer Crumbley sees her son at the substation, and for the first time, when he looks at her, his eyes looked black, and it was a son she did not recognize. Jennifer Crumbley and James Crumbley go back to their house where law enforcement execute a search warrant. Law enforcement takes their cell phones, which the Crumbleys handed over. The Crumbleys have to go and buy burner phones or track phones so they have something to use to be in touch. They begin to realize that there are death threats around their house. People are planning riots around their house, and they cannot be in their home. Jennifer Crumbley and James Crumbley drive to a hotel where they spend the night. They are trying to figure out what is happening, and all Jennifer can think about are the things she believes she can control, like keeping her job, keeping health insurance, figuring out money, figuring out lawyers, and trying to digest what has just absolutely tragically unfolded. In the days following the event, while the prosecution says the evidence will show Jennifer Crumbley is lying, Jennifer Crumbley is truthfully telling the world she had no idea and finding out that she is about to be charged in this Band-Aid effort by the prosecution with involuntary manslaughter. Jennifer and James Crumbley go to the bank. They're advised by friends and family, and you will hear testimony that their money could all be taken out of their accounts, and they know they need money to be able to live and hire lawyers and figure out what to do. They withdraw all of the money from their bank account. The burner phones they're using, they can't get access to any of their accounts because of this two-part authentication you now have to do. So they go to the Metro PCS store where they buy new telephones that they can actually use to access their social media, their accounts, their contacts, and they end up with multiple cell phones. After that, they work to find lawyers. They don't know what to do. They don't understand what they're being charged with. They're under the stress of knowing their son is gone, and life will never be the same, undoubtedly. And on Friday, December 3rd, the Crumbleys find out when a press conference is held that they are being charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. And at that point, they attempt to try to figure out what to do, where to stay, where to go, what to do. And they ultimately ask a friend if they can stay at his art studio until they know where to go and what to do. They make plans to turn themselves into the court on Saturday morning, because remember, this is late in the day Friday. Saturday morning at 8:30 when the court opens up and does weekend arraignments. And overnight, the prosecutor's office, the sheriff's department, the fugitive apprehension team, the U.S. Marshals have a statewide search claiming that James Crumbley and Jennifer Crumbley are on the lam. They are running, they are fleeing, they are trying to avoid charges, and it couldn't be any further from the truth. They are at their friend's art studio, they are waiting for instructions, and they are waiting to turn themselves in first thing Saturday morning when arraignments take place at the court. James and Jennifer Crumbley are sleeping on a mattress in the middle of the night. When police locate them, you will hear evidence. They're not really hiding. They're standing outside their car, their vehicle, smoking cigarettes. They're standing outside their car, talking on the telephone. They're communicating with various people they know. There's absolutely no evidence to suggest that they're fleeing. You will see body camera footage where when police come into the art studio to find them dead asleep on this mattress, they are cooperative, they are taken into custody, and they are arrested. The prosecution has grossly misconstrued facts in this case, and I ask that you wait to make any judgment until all of the evidence has been presented and you have seen every detail of it, including Jennifer Crumbley's testimony, and she is going to take the stand and tell you about her life with her son, about the day he became the shooter, and about the day he did something she could have never anticipated or fathomed or predicted. She will tell you that when she saw the materials in this case, she learned that her son had not been her son for months, that he had been manipulating her, that he had been hiding things from her, that he had been sending text messages, alarming text messages to other people. You will hear that the school never advised Mrs. Crumbley of problematic issues that if she had heard about, she would have jumped right on top of it. Despite the fact, the evidence will show that Mrs. Crumbley is on power schools, managing missing assignments by her son in his grades. The school never told her about times the shooter was trying to sleep in class, about a test he had failed, about the shooter being called to the office. She was never informed. You will hear testimony. She was never informed that the shooter wrote an autobiographical get to know you poster where he says he feels terrible and his family's a mistake. The school never notified Mrs. Crumbley of this. You will hear testimony that the school never notified Mrs. Crumbley that the shooter was having a, quote, rough time when he spoke to the school counselor. You will hear testimony that the school never notified Ms. Crumbley that previous work found in the shooter's files showed that it leaned a little bit towards the violent side. You will hear testimony that the school never told Mrs. Crumbley about an index card the shooter wrote in class that had odd responses with a drawing of a loaded gun magazine and a person holding it out. You will hear that Mrs. Crumbley was never told much of the information the school had. And so when the prosecution is urging you not to assign fault to anyone else, at the end of the day, we ask that you pay attention to the evidence that Mrs. Crumbley knew. And quite frankly, when you evaluate that evidence and know what she knew and what she didn't know, and learn the context behind the slivers of evidence this prosecution's presenting, you will see that this was absolutely not foreseeable. This was absolutely not expected. And I am going to ask that you find Jennifer Crumbley not guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Can you tell me who the first witness is? I'm going to ask the jury if they need a break. Do you need a break? I knew I shouldn't have given them coffee. Okay, so we'll take like a 10-minute break and then we'll hear the first witness, okay?
All right, for the jury. All right. They go differently.
Yeah, we're, Right, you may be seated. Who's the first witness?
Darnell.
Okay, does she need to go downstairs or not?
Your Honor, I need to run to the bathroom. Do you need to go to the bathroom? She's okay unless the deputies, I think they need to take her downstairs.
I don't think you have to take her downstairs at every break, do you? I don't know.
It just gives her a chance to also use the bathroom. So
Oh, no, I
we
want
don't interrupt as many times.
Oh, yeah, I want her to be comfortable, so whatever she needs.
She does not need to use the restroom.
Okay, it's up to you. It's up to you.
We'll just take it outside and just use
You have a taser and a gun, so I'm not gonna tell you.
it. It's a lot of paperwork.
Your Honor, what time are we planning to be back?
Just by 10 o'clock, okay?
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
I'll
brief,
be back.
brief.
I'm just waiting for that.
I'd like to go quickly, so whatever you guys want to do, okay?
All rise.
So, 5 and 6.
Can you slide it your son, please? Yeah. Yeah. Please, sure, it's a little short. Okay. I'll try to find the other. But this one is long, right? This one? Yeah. Okay, that's why I did that. Yeah. The tank top. Why? Yeah. The tank top. Okay, okay, okay. We're trying like our, here's the bras. Were they? Yes. Okay, good. Okay. Oh, Elena, have you met John? Elena, this is John. Elena's my paralegal that did all this and has everything in place. So she's fantastic. I had her come with me today because they didn't tell me what they're doing, and so I was like, I gotta bring it all in. And Elena is just like fantastic. So she pushed us a lot. And yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay. I was reading about the origins of this.
All right, court is now in session.
So,
What do you do with the prosecutors?
they always go away. I have no idea. Do you want me to go? I'll go grab
The
them.
deputies,
Okay. They keep running away. I'm not gonna bite them, I promise.
they probably scared you.
Maybe.
They're coming down the hall.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I hope it's okay with you that we just like stay.
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to take long breaks, but I don't want to, make them sit there for hours on end if they're uncomfortable, so.
We don't have a room, so we're like happy here.
We offered to find you one.
Yeah, we're happy here.
Okay.
We're happy. We're good.
All right.
You did offer, thank you.
Are you ready for the jury? Yeah, okay.
All rise for the jury.
It's probably late to tell you this, but there's a little step there. I found that out the hard way in the dark the first time I came here, so be careful. All right, you may be seated.
Your Honor, calling people versus Jennifer Crumbley, case number 22279990 FH.
Thank you, Marquise. On behalf of people, Karen McDonald is here as well.
And thank you. I'm Shaven Smith on behalf of Jennifer Crumbley.
Sean Godwin.
Who's the first witness?
Molly Darnell.
Okay.
Ms. McDonald is here from all.
Your Honor, just before, I'll just hold off.
I'm sorry?
There's one exhibit that the prosecution is going to introduce that I'm going to object to. I just want to let the court know.
Do you know what number it is?
I do. It is number 7.
Are you stipulating to the admission of the other ones or not?
Yes.
I know we were going to talk about this at
Yes.
some point.
Yes, I believe that Ms. Darnell's exhibits 5, 6, and 8, and we have no objection to those. 7 we do, and I believe that's already been a ruling by the court. I just have to continue my objection.
Okay, so this was ruled on previously.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so 7 was already admitted in a written opinion.
It was,
right?
Judge.
Okay.
I just have to maintain my objection.
Sure.
Thank
sure.
you.
Okay.
For the record, that is a portion of the Oxford High School surveillance footage.
Correct. Okay.
And for the record, we just think it's not necessary.
All right. All right. Could you step forward? Could you raise? It's all cozy in here. I apologize. Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give is the truth, so help you God? Yes. Okay, you can be seated. And then could you state your name for the record and spell your first and last name?
My name is Molly Darnell, MOLLY-DARNELL.
Go ahead, prosecutor.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm going to call you Molly. I assume that's okay.
That's okay.
Okay. Molly, can you tell the jury what your profession is?
I'm an educator.
Where is it? Are you a teacher?
I am a teacher.
Okay. And who is your employer?
Oxford Schools.
Okay. How long have you been in? How long have you worked for Oxford Schools?
I started working for Oxford in the fall of '98.
Okay. Would that be your entire career?
That is my entire career.
Okay. And you stayed in that one school district?
Correct.
Okay. Your current position is what?
I work for Oxford Virtual Academy.
All right. And when did you begin that position?
I began that position 18 months ago.
Okay. I'm going to take you back to November 30th of 2021. Can you tell the jury what your position was at that time?
At that time in Oxford, I was under teacher contract, but I was the ELA coach and the International Baccalaureate Coordinator. So I worked specifically with curriculum and teachers, like instructional moves in the classroom.
Okay,
So
so,
ELA, what's ELA?
I'm sorry, thank you. It's English Language Arts.
all right, thanks, George. So how much contact did you have with students compared to teachers at that point?
I would say minimal in comparison to teachers.
All right, and you did though spend some time in the classroom in your career?
Absolutely, yes. I spent the majority of my career in the classroom.
So on that day, what was your typical day like around that time in that position?
So in that position, I would work with building kind of professional development opportunities, or I was working with teachers individually. On that day in particular, I was working with the media specialist and my other coaching colleagues, my other instructional coaching colleagues on building professional development for the next day.
All right, did you have a classroom?
I had an office that I shared with two other individuals, and it was like half a classroom, but it was in the educational hallway.
So it was a classroom made into two offices?
Mhm.
Okay. Can you tell the jury when classes began that morning? What was the schedule of the day, began and end, if you remember?
So you're referring to like the start day of the school
Yes.
day? The school day started around 7:30 and ended around 3 o'clock.
And I know Oxford had a different, they didn't have exactly the same schedule every day.
Yeah, we had a rotating 7, so we met 6 days a week. We met 6 classes a day. But we had 7 classes, so the students only were there in every single class for 4 hours a week.
Can you tell the jury what passing time is?
Passing time was about, Oxford's one of the larger high schools in the state. It's the largest single floor high school in the state, I think, at the time.
Do you know how many students?
I off the top of my head, I don't.
Okay.
And so there were about 8 minutes between passing times, or between passing.
All right. November 30th, 2021, were there any COVID protocols still in place?
Yes, we were still in masks at that point in time, yes.
And were lockers being used?
Lockers were not being used.
Okay, so how were the kids getting their things from class to class?
They were carrying book bags. Yep.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as people's proposed Exhibit 5. I don't believe there's an objection, Your Honor.
That's
When I-
correct, Your Honor.
When I say I'm going to show you, it's going to be on this screen and this screen.
5 submitted.
Okay. Molly, what is that?
That's the layout of the high school.
All right, so that's a map of the school.
Correct.
Okay. And can you tell me where your classroom / office was?
So if you're looking at that yellow portion, I am, thank you. I am where you see 222, and then there's 226. I'm that little sliver right in between there, and that was 224.
Okay, Mark's going to show you
Yep.
on the map. He's
Correct.
not letting me have access to the clicker for the trial, so we're relying on him. Okay, so is that your classroom?
Yes, that like little sliver where you can see, it looks like a bunch of names are written in there.
Mm-hmm.
That was the room that I was in, yes.
Okay. And I'm going to take you to around the time of about 12:50.
Okay.
What were you doing during that time?
So on that day, the year prior, I was in the classroom, and I had a student who popped by around that time just to check in and wanted to chat. I had a chat with her. There was, I believe it was the beginning of passing that she stopped by. We had a quick little chat.
Was that conversation in your
It was in the
office or in the
office.
hallway?
Yep, it was in the office.
Was the door open or closed?
The door was open.
Okay.
We had a little chat. She left. I was alone in the office. And passing was still happening. So I moved to my desk space just to check some emails, check on a couple of things.
Okay. So your desk was in the back of the classroom?
Yeah, it was towards the back side, yes,
Facing the door?
facing the door.
Okay.
Correct.
And did you have a practice of what you did during passing time?
So sometimes I would go out in the hall and check, like just to check and see what was going on, or I might chat with a teacher or two. I didn't on that day because it was towards the end of passing time, and so I knew things would be wrapping up and teachers would be heading back to their classes.
Okay. So at some point, did you see or hear anything unusual?
Yeah, so all of a sudden I could hear a commotion in the hallway, and I looked up from my laptop, and I see a bunch of kids running through the hallway. It was a pack of kids, and they were moving pretty quickly, and there was a commotion around it. I couldn't tell if it was like excited, that it was like higher pitched though. And it was almost like some of the kids' hands were extended, like they were trying to move really quickly.
Okay, for the record, you have your hands, both your hands up, shoulder distance. Okay, and that seemed unusual to you?
It did.
Okay, did it seem unusual because it was at the end of passing time, or just because of the movement and the sound?
It was the movement, it was the sound, it was the large bulk of kids that were moving.
What did you do?
I exited my office. I believe that there was possibly a fight. So I run out of my office. I'm about midway through where 222 is. And I see all those kids exiting out of door 4. So I know there's not a fight.
So if you look at the map, you come out of your classroom and you look down the hallway and they're all running out of the school?
Yeah, on a door 4.
Okay, and that was unusual?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes, I had never seen that before.
All right. And then what happened?
I paused for a second because I'm thinking like, well, what's going on, right? I don't know what's happening. I head back into my office space. The hallway is completely clear. And I walk into my office and I'm like, all right, what could possibly be happening in this moment?
Was it unusual for the hallway to be completely clear?
I don't believe the bell had rung yet, so
Okay.
that was unusual.
Okay. And so what did you do?
It was in pausing, trying to like gather what to do next. I heard 3 things pretty quickly together, like so quickly together that I have a hard time distinguishing what came first and what came last. But there were the sound of like 3 like loud pops that I could have mistaken for lockers closing if we were using lockers.
Okay. So when you heard the 3 pops, what did you think that sound was?
Well, again, there was doors started slamming. I could hear like boom, 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 boom. And then the principal at the time, Steve Wolf, came over the PA and said, we're heading into lockdown. This is not a drill.
And how long had you known Steve?
So a couple years at that point in time.
Okay. Did his voice sound panicked?
His voice sounded, it was like urgent, but you could tell he was like tempering any, like panic.
So was that before the loud pops or after, if you can remember?
Honestly, I cannot remember.
Okay. When you heard this, was your door open or closed?
My door, when I came back in, I pulled it, but it didn't shut, so it was open a couple inches.
Okay. So what did you do?
At that point in time, I moved to shut my door.
Okay. Did you, after the pop, did you smell anything?
No.
Did you see anything?
No.
All right. Then you tell the jury what happened when you turned around and headed to the door.
So I walked to the door. I immediately pull it shut. To the left of my door, so my door was here and there was a glass part, like, floor to ceiling glass. And then right here was a night lock system.
Can you tell the jury what a night lock system is?
So a night lock is a simple gadget that goes into the door that goes into the floor, so that if the door were unlocked, it's like a second security measure. If the door was not locked, or even if it was, someone can't get in. So if the glass is shut out, even if they're trying to undo the door, they can't open the door.
And when did you learn about night locks?
Maybe 4 years prior.
Okay. Did you do that? Well, why did you install the night lock?
Well, one, I was directed that we're in lockdown,
Okay.
right? So as soon as I knew that we're in lockdown, that's what you do.
Were you able to install the night lock?
So I grabbed the night lock, I undid the piece, grabbed it, and looked down at it. So I also, some of the doors have different installs, whether the door goes, in or out from the room. And so I looked at it to see, just to remind myself which one, because the other office that I have at the middle school, or had at the middle school at the time, had a different.
At this point, Molly, the door is shut or closed?
The door is shut.
Are you facing the door or facing away?
I'm facing the door,
Okay.
so I'm close enough to that wall because I had just grabbed it.
Do you know about what the distance was between you and that door?
Not even a foot.
Okay. And then what happened?
I look at it, and out of my peripheral vision, I can see some sort of movement. And so I look up, and I see someone dressed in dark, oversized clothing.
And you're looking through that glass pane next to your door, okay?
They have the mask on, a hat, glasses, and a hood. And I lock eyes with them.
Had you ever seen that person before?
I had not, no.
Did you know if it was a student or is that a no?
I did not know if it was a student.
All right. And you said you locked eyes?
I locked eyes. And then instantly I see some movement. And so I look down, and I realize he's raising a gun to me.
Okay. Can you describe?
Yeah, the gun was black, and I remember thinking, as he's raising the gun to me, that there was no orange tip. I'd heard prior that BB guns have an orange tip.
When you say he was raising the gun, can you explain what that looked like? Was it one arm or two arms?
Well, I just saw the one starting to move up. I saw the gun, and I moved.
Which way did you move?
I moved away from the glass partition, away from the door, toward back into the room.
Okay. You just described you saw something in your peripheral vision. You looked up. You locked eyes.
I locked eyes. He didn't hesitate.
Okay. About how long was that from the time you saw the peripheral vision and then the gun was raised?
A second.
Okay.
If that.
When you locked eyes with this individual, what did you see?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Describe that for me.
I lock eyes with him, and I instantly see that movement. And I jump to the side.
Okay. What happened after you jumped to the side?
As I jump,
And was did you ever get the night lock installed at that
the
point?
night lock is not installed at this point.
Okay.
So when I move, I kind of jump and turn my body this way at the same time.
Okay, and for the record, you're turning your
Yeah.
shoulders to the right.
To the right.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like my left shoulder moves back a bit, and I feel a burn like hot water had stung me.
Where did you feel that?
In my arm,
Which arm?
in my left arm.
Okay, and you're pointing to your
Yeah.
right below your shoulder?
Yep.
Okay. And are you standing up? Are you sitting down? Are you?
I'm standing up at this point in time. I feel that hot burn go through my arm. And I turn back. There was a window in the back of my room that leads out to the courtyard. And I see a bullet hole.
Okay, I'm going to show you on the screen what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 6.
Any objection?
No, Judge.
6 is admitted.
What is that, Molly?
That's the office that I shared.
Okay, and that, can you just describe where the desk is, where what you just described, and point that out? You said
Yep.
you turned around to the back of the classroom.
Yep, so you can see on that window exiting, there's a white mark.
Right there?
Yep, that would be the bullet hole.
Did you, is that what you noticed when you turned around?
That is what I noticed when I turned around, correct.
Okay. At this point, what were you thinking?
A BB gun can't do that. It seems like really silly.
What seems silly?
That I couldn't wrap my head around what was happening.
I mean, after you felt the warmth and you still were thinking it might be a BB gun.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you do? Is the night lock installed at this point?
The night lock's not installed at this point, and the only thing I'm thinking is I have to barricade this door. Like, there was instinct that kicked in. So what you can't see is right around that corner, there was this huge filing cabinet.
And I think if we can point, so to the, around that corner to,
Yeah.
okay.
And so I grab it, because I'm afraid to go back towards the door at this point in time. And I try to move it, thinking maybe I can pull it out enough and push it, and it was just too heavy for me. So that rolling cart was sitting next to it. That's when I pulled out the rolling cart, and no, sorry, I take that back.
It's
I
okay,
didn't do
take
that
your
yet.
time. Take your time.
I crawled down on my hands and knees and I put that night lock in. And then I moved for the rolling. I was like, I just have to keep barricading. And so I grabbed the rolling cart.
Is the object in the,
Yeah, you
In the
can see it's
picture?
the little red object on the rolling cart. Yep.
oh, that's the night lock. Okay, but that, it's sitting on that's the rolling cart, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, and were you able to put it in front of the door?
I was able to put the rolling cart in front of the door, correct.
Okay, and then what did you do?
Then the only thing I can think of is he's gonna come back and finish what he wanted to do.
Did you hear anything else in the hallway?
At this point, I'm not hearing anything.
Okay. And so what did you do?
So I go back to that large cabinet, because I know if I'm anywhere in the back of this room, he can see. So I need to hide in this front corner. And so I pull that large filing cabinet back just enough to crawl behind it, so that if he comes to that window, he can't see where I'm at.
So the way the classrooms are is you have to be at a certain angle to see certain parts of the room from the hallway, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you said you moved to that corner behind because what?
Because I didn't want him to see where I was at.
Okay. Once you were behind the cabinet, were you sitting?
I was crouched down. I was trying to make myself as small as possible. Right, I got really low. I was on my bottom, crouched as close together physically as I could make myself.
Okay. What did you do next?
I had texted my husband, "I love you, active shooter." And then I started feeling blood dripping down my arm.
What did you do? At this point, had you registered that you had been shot?
I don't think I was registering that I was shot. I just knew that I was bleeding.
Okay. What did you do?
I had a cardigan on that day, and so you can see in the photo there's this red little bag on the side, on the right side of the wall. Those are those are medical response bags that we keep in every room. So if someone's bleeding or if a tourniquet's needed, they're in there, but I was too afraid to go back and grab it. So at that point, I knew I needed to put a tourniquet on. I knew I was bleeding. I removed my cardigan and I used one of the sleeves of the arm, wrapped it up on top and pulled with one arm, my teeth with the other, to tighten it.
And Molly, how many inches down was that wound?
It sits right here.
Okay, and you brought a cardigan so that you could show the jury what that looks like, so they know exactly where you were hit?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you can all see okay, but.
You can step down if you feel comfortable doing
Can
so.
everyone see?
I can see, yeah.
So you can see it kind of sits in the back, so when I was turned, that was the entrance and the exit.
And there's 2 holes there.
Yep, so it entered here, it exited here, and the space in between, the heat of the bullet cauterized,
The skin?
the skin.
Okay, you can sit back down. You put the tourniquet where on your shoulder?
I put it above the wound.
Okay. How'd you know how to do that?
We go through trainings, once a year regarding, what to do.
Okay.
You know, in the situation.
What happened next?
I put the tourniquet on. And I'm in my head, I'm thinking, okay, what do I do next? What's like the next move here? And my daughter texts me. She didn't go to Oxford High School, but she went to a neighboring school district. And they had heard through social media that there was a shooting at Oxford High School. And so she sent me a message and just said, Mom, are you okay? And I responded to her that I love you. I'm sheltered in place. And I'm fine.
You didn't tell her you were hit?
I did not tell her I was shot, no.
Molly, I want to go back, and I'm so sorry. When the shooter raised his hand, what were your what did you notice about, if you noticed anything about his stance, or you said you locked eyes?
Yeah. His feet were set about hip distance apart. And that's, you know, he was, and his shoulders were like, he was square, right? He was square.
How long were you in that classroom?
I was in there for about 20 minutes.
Were you communicating with anyone else in the school, or law enforcement or administration?
No, there were a couple teachers. My hallway had a text thread, and that was not active. There was nobody texting on that. But another part of the building where the English Language Arts Department is at, they were texting. And one of them said, I heard there was a shooter. And I responded that I saw one.
Did you respond that I've been shot?
I did not.
Why is that?
I think I didn't want to like create panic. Like I wanted to make sure that people knew it was serious, but there's no, like, I'm okay.
Okay. At this point, did you have any idea where the shooter was, if anyone else had been hurt? What were you hearing? Anything?
Nothing. And it was absolute silence for a long time. And then I started to hear a volume of footsteps. And I thought, they must be evacuating a classroom. And so when that shift occurred, I texted the teacher next door and I said, hey, you're the only one that knows right now, but I've been shot. I hope I'm the only one.
How long was that? How long were you in the room?
At that point, it was probably 18 minutes.
Okay. At some point, did somebody ask you to leave the classroom?
Yes, so the teacher next door was like, oh my gosh, I'm calling the office. There was another teacher in the room with her who texted administration.
Okay. And at some point, did somebody come to the door?
Yep, so the text from administration, Kurt Noose was at my door within maybe 2 minutes. Time's hard on that. And he was like knocking, Molly, are you in there? I've known Kurt Noose since they started in Oxford. I did not trust that was him at my door.
What were you afraid that it was?
I don't know. Everything that I knew to be reality wasn't.
So did you answer him back, or did you open the door, or did you just remain silent?
I said, I'm in here, and he said, are you okay? I don't remember how I responded. It was within a second or two that then there were police at the door, and they were like, are you in here? Are you injured? I said, yes. And then I said, do you want me to, it was clear that they wanted me to, like, they were there for me.
And they couldn't just open the door.
They can't just open that door. That night lock prevents them from getting in the door.
And Molly, if you know, how would you get into that room if someone doesn't remove the night lock from the inside? Is there a way?
So I know there's a special tool to use, but you'd have to take everything off that door, and that's all steel.
So the frame, actually.
Yes.
Okay. And so they were asking you to remove the night lock. Did you do that?
I said, do you want me to remove the night lock? And they said, yes, remove the night lock. And then I said, do you want me to open the door? And they said, yes, open the door. And I'm down on the ground while I'm doing all of this. Like, I'm removing the night lock and I'm opening up the door from my knees. And they like scoop me up, and I can see the two officers that scoop me up, but I can see Kurt standing there against the lockers. And I can see 4 cops with guns.
Did you see any students?
I did not see any students, no.
Okay, Molly, I'm gonna play a surveillance, which is marked People's Exhibit 7, which I know there's an objection to, but the judge has previously ruled. Just to let the jury know, you're not gonna see any victims in this, except for Molly, and nor are you going to see any students.
Can everybody see?
While he's getting that on the monitor, when you say you saw 2 officers with guns, how far away were they? And were they in the same direction?
They were. When they scooped me up, the 2 that scooped me up.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you. Look here.
Yep.
Is that the hallway?
That's the hallway.
Okay.
So you can see there's multiple around. So it wasn't just the 2.
Where's your classroom in this photo?
It's farther down, right? So you can see, like they're going inwards towards the classroom.
Okay.
It looks like that's an officer there.
Okay.
So I knew that they were officers based on the vests that they were wearing. And so they're just, they were just around, right, as well, like securing the area, I suppose.
All right, can you press play? Is that you, Molly?
That is me.
At this point, are you hearing anything in the building?
No, everything is silent, like almost like it's like echoey. It's so silent.
Okay, now you can see through that glass door. Is that you?
That is me.
What's happening?
He's removing the self-made tourniquet from my cardigan. And he's putting on an actual tourniquet.
Okay, and at some point you get into an ambulance, correct?
Yes, so at this point, he says, I'm gonna radio to see if there's an ambulance available for you. Making sure that no one else needed it ahead of me.
Okay. You eventually get into an ambulance. They take you where?
They took me to Lapeer.
What happened when you got there?
So I got to Lapeer, and the doctor comes out to the ambulance and introduces himself. And they said, I was sitting in the ambulance the entire time, and then they said, we're gonna put you on the gurney. And I said, I can walk. Like, if I can walk, I wanna walk. And so they helped me out of the ambulance, and I walk in, and they're like steadying, you know, like kind of almost holding me up, steadying me. And the hallways are lined with doctors and nurses.
Did you see any other victims?
I did not, no.
Okay. And they treated your wound?
They did.
Okay. Were you able to, I assume they ran some tests. I want to be cognizant of the judge's prior ruling about what you can testify to. But at what point, how long were you at the hospital?
I have no idea what time I walked in those doors.
Okay.
I was there for several hours.
Did you learn at some point there were other victims?
I did ask when I was in the hospital, is anybody else been injured? And I was, you know, I was told that there were other victims and a few fatalities, yes.
Okay, at some point did you hear a teacher was shot?
I did.
And what did you think?
I instantly thought it was another one of my colleagues. I knew the direction that I saw him turn, so I knew what direction he came.
And who was the teacher now?
I thought it was Lauren Jasinski that was shot.
But who was the teacher they referred to?
It was me.
At some point, you were shown weeks later a picture of your doorway.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Okay, do you remember who showed that to you?
No.
Okay, was it me?
I did. Well, I did see. I did see it in your office. Yes.
Okay, and you were preparing to testify.
Yes.
I'm gonna put that picture on the screen. It's People's Exhibit 8. I don't think there's a objection.
Any objection?
There's no objection.
8 submitted.
Molly, is that your classroom door?
That is my. Yes.
Okay. What was your reaction when you saw that?
He was aiming to kill me.
Do you know which one of those shots landed in your shoulder?
I don't. I have no idea which one landed on my shoulder, but I know the top one, that's where my head would have been. And the two down below are my chest area.
Okay.
I unlock that door every day.
And what was your, did you have some, what is your, when you think about the wound and why you weren't hit, why was it? In the chest?
That door, the distance, the door, and me moving was the only reason that I'm alive.
How many inches from your heart was that, that injury to your shoulder?
The actual wound is 6 inches, but my turn might have made it less.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Ross? I have no questions further.
Can this witness be excused, Your Honor?
Yes, please. You can step down when you're excused. All right. Who's the next witness?
Christy Gibson-Marshall.
Okay. We had a discussion about the boundaries of her testimony. I don't know if we put that on the record. Do we need to or not?
We've prepared her, Your Honor.
Okay,
We understand it's not another hearing, we know it's a trial.
okay, all right. The media is asking whether or not they can videotape tape the video. I don't see a reason why they can't, right?
No, there's no minors.
Oh, okay, I want to make sure.
Judge, actually, this one, in this portion,
Oh, yes, in this portion. We'll indicate which,
right.
which, videos can be shown.
Okay. Yeah, give them a heads up so they know.
I'm mostly concerned with giving a heads up to the jury so everyone's prepared.
And then, Your Honor, again, the defense objects to, I believe it's just one exhibit you're using with Ms. Gibson.
Oh, with this witness?
I believe it's only exhibit
No.
9.
Yeah. Well, this was previously extensively briefed.
Yes.
And, I made a written ruling about it. Yeah. But your objections are good.
Thank you.
There's people called Christy Gibson-Marshall.
Good morning. Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give is the truth so help you God? All right, please be seated, and then would you state your name for the record and spell your first and last name?
Christy Gibson-Marshall, KRISTY-GIBSON-MARSHALL.
Go ahead, prosecutor.
Thank you. Good morning. May I call you Christy?
Yes,
Christy, could you please tell the jury where you're employed?
Oxford Community Schools,
How long have you been with Oxford?
29 years,
And what do you do right now?
I'm an assistant principal
Okay. And that's at the high school?
at high school,
How long have you been the assistant principal at the high school?
6 years.
And what did you do before that?
I was an elementary principal,
Also in Oxford District?
yes.
Now, if you could tell the jury a little bit about your role as an assistant principal. What are some of your responsibilities?
Teacher supervision, evaluation, curriculum and instruction, supervising, I do parent communications. It's hard to think of all the stuff that's my big giant list while I'm sitting here, but we have a student relations team that works together to support our alphabet, part of the alphabet. We big goal is, like, to me, my biggest role is supporting students, and I love the kids, so just bringing energy and having fun with them.
You've been in education, you said, for 29 years?
Yeah, yes.
So up until this role, you were an elementary school principal?
I was, and then prior to that, I was a teacher.
Teacher before that, okay. Now, as it happens, the school that you were principal at was Jennifer Crumbley's son, one of those students.
Yes.
Okay. And what grades, if you recall, was he there?
4th and 5th.
Did you have any contact with him in your role as a principal in those 4th and 5th grade years? Did you have any contact with his mother or father?
Not that I remember. I had an email about a report card once, but that's all I remember.
And that would have been years prior?
Like 5th grade going to 6th.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention to November the 30th of 2021, about 12:50 in the afternoon. So we have the screen in front of you. That should be displaying People's Exhibit 5. This is a map of the Oxford High School.
Yes.
If you could tell us, if you recall, where you were about 12:50 in the afternoon that day.
I was in the cafeteria. I started in the cafeteria supervising lunches. So what would be, I guess, they're the commons.
So right
Yes,
here?
correct.
Okay. So was that lunchtime while you were there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
And is there a time where you moved? So around that time on November the 30th, did you have a specific area of the school you would go to, or did you move around?
We didn't have an assigned area, but I like to go to the senior courtyard after lunches and just kind of help see that courtyard area.
Okay.
The hallway out in front of this courtyard area between where you see 400 and 401.
Okay.
Our seniors hang out there and they congregate in a good way, not terrible. Let me just clarify. It's kind of like the rite of passage, and we just like to kind of go there and keep traffic flowing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something you would do on a routine basis?
Yeah. My bad mom joke on that one is that I make it a senior citizen window and I stand in that area.
Was there a point that day when you realized something was going wrong?
When I was approaching the senior courtyard, so when I was coming down the hallway from the commons, what says commons, I call it cafeteria, by the media center, by the courtyard, and hit the 500 room. When I kind of got to that triangle there, that diamond there, one of the students that I know pretty well went running by and said, "Get the hell out of here." And he was laughing and running, and I was like, that was a mixed message.
Sure. At that point, was there an announcement on the loudspeaker?
No, not at that point, no.
Okay.
No.
Was he the only one running?
Shortly after him, there was a group of kids laughing and running behind him. When I stopped to ask them what was going on, they weren't entirely sure. But as kids started to pass, you could see it got more serious.
Okay.
I grabbed my walkie-talkie and I
What do you mean it got more serious? What do you mean by that?
their faces got more, I'm sorry, their faces became more serious.
Okay. Did that signify something to you when you saw that?
Yeah, just something, them running signified something to me because it's not a typical behavior.
Okay.
But the running and laughing was confusing, and then when their faces became more serious, I was started to get very worried, and that's when I grabbed my walkie-talkie.
What'd you do with your walkie-talkie?
I said, I'm not sure what's happening, but kids are running in the hallway, which is very odd, and look like they're trying to leave the building.
So where did you go?
They shortly after I got on the walkie, they went to Alice Alert, and so
What's Alice Alert?
Alice Alert is our intruder. I'm going to call it intruder alert because that's what it was that day. But it's a notice that we need to take cover, lock down, be aware. It's
So
an
is that
emergency assist.
an alarm ringing, or is that somebody who's giving a message over the PA system? Do you recall who gave that message?
Steve Wolf.
Who was that?
Steve is our principal.
Who's the principal? Okay. So
Is this shortly after you saw the students leaving that appeared to be more serious to you?
Practically the same. Yeah, it was like they went, when the more serious students came by, the announcement went on.
Okay. Now, when you hear that announcement, what were you supposed to do?
Supposed to walk down.
Did you?
No.
What did you do?
I went to check the hallways to make sure people were okay.
When you first started to check the hallways, did you see anybody?
The hallways cleared so fast. When I made the turn down the 400 hallway, I ran into a teacher who was locking his door, and then a student came up who was running late. He asked if it was a drill. I let him know that it didn't matter if it was a drill or not, just you gotta get covered in there. And then I proceeded down the hallway. I was the only one in the hallway at that point.
Did you hear anything?
First, I smelled something. I smelled what I thought was cap gun.
Okay.
Later, figured out was gunpowder. And then I heard two gunshots.
Where were you when you first smelled what you thought to be cap gun?
Probably by like the somewhere between 409 and 414.
So you were continuing to walk down that hallway, the 400 hallway, towards the 200 hallway. That's in yellow highlight.
Yes, that's where I heard the gunshots. I was going that direction.
You were walking towards the gunshots.
Yep. Yes.
As you walked down the hallway, did you see anybody else?
No.
Tell me where you went.
When I got to the end of the hallway, I realized how dumb this is. I turned left to go towards where I heard the gunshots.
So this hallway,
And I went towards 225.
so you came down the 400 hallway and you turned left towards 225.
Yes.
Tell us what you saw when you made a left.
I saw a student laying on the ground.
Did you know who he was?
I didn't at that time, no.
Okay.
His face was covered. And then as I continued a couple of steps, I could see another student walking my direction. He had just dropped his arm was up and then he dropped his arm.
Did you recognize him?
Not at that point, no. He was too far away.
What did you do when you saw a student on the ground?
There was a garbage can between he and I, so I moved the garbage can out of the way. And I put my foot near him and nudged him and told him to stay there.
Did he respond? Could you tell if he was injured at that point?
You could tell he was injured.
What happened next?
Ethan then came into closer view, and I could tell it was Ethan.
He had been at the school where you were principal?
Yes.
Did you interact with him at all at Oxford High School?
Just normal, like how I interact with everybody. High fives, hugs, silly stuff that I do.
Okay.
I brought my elementary to the high school, so I just.
Did you say anything to him?
When he got close enough to me that we were sharing the hallway, so he was kind of walking down the center and I was kind of over to the side, so we're probably 3 feet apart. I asked him if he's okay. It just didn't seem right that it would be him.
So I need to back up just a little bit. When you didn't know who it was at first, the student down the hallway, you said he had lowered his arm.
I knew it was a shooter when he was down the hallway.
Okay. Could you see if he was holding anything?
I could see a gun.
At that point, was he walking towards you or away from you?
He was walking towards me. It was when I realized it was Ethan that I didn't think he could possibly be the shooter is what happened. I know I said I knew he was a shooter down there because I could rationalize that is a gun. He is putting that gun down. He just shot something.
Okay. Now, I know this is difficult, but I need you to use your teacher voice and speak
Okay.
as loud as you can. Thank you.
You saw him coming towards you. How close, how far from him were you when you recognized who it was?
He was probably by the from 220 one when I could tell who he was.
Okay.
And I was standing between 226 and that white section there that, yeah. There's exit doors there.
Now, you said you said something to him?
Yeah, it seems so odd that it was him, so I said, buddy, are you okay? What's going on? And when he didn't respond to me and he looked away, that's when I knew it was him, that he was the shooter.
Did he point the gun at you?
He did not.
What did you do at that point?
I got on the walkie and I told my team that I have eyes on a shooter and I have a victim.
Now this hallway, 200 hallway, there's a curve to it.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. And he was walking, if we followed the mouse cursor here, he's walking down the 200 hallway towards 233 and 237?
Yeah, he was walking that direction.
That direction?
Yes.
Did you watch where he went?
No.
What did you do?
There was a student who was injured, so I went to him. I knew he needed.
And I know you're aware, but there's been certain rulings by the court, so just in general terms, did you render aid to that student?
I did.
Could you tell if he was injured at that point?
Yes.
Did you recognize him?
Yeah, I knew another one of my students from Lakeville. Tate near. Just took my breath away.
Were you were on the walkie-talkie, you said?
Yes. So I let them know I had eyes on the shooter and that I had a victim. Kurt News asked me where I was. It's probably the biggest hallway we have, and I said I was in the 200 hallway. Kurt let me know that that's a very big hallway and needed more direction. I don't know why I couldn't process the fact that, like, my exact location, I told him I was near the 400.
Okay. Did you stay with Tate until help arrived?
Yes.
Now, you have seen at least a portion of the Oxford High School surveillance video, is that right?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's 9. It's been admitted. It cannot be broadcast on the media.
All of it? I've never seen it, so you have to tell me.
Oh, the entire, this is a short clip of it. None of it can be.
Okay. You have, okay, so you guys are not video, okay. Everybody gets it?
No. I have a tight shot of
You're gonna stop the live stream? Should we stop the live stream?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please. Okay, all right.
I do want to give notice to juries.
I'm sorry, is the prosecution further
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't think straight.
Oh, yeah, I think he said that he's
Yes.
finished, yeah.
Okay. I have no questions for you, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Can this one is good?
Yes, you can step down and you're excused. Who's the next witness?
It's Cammy Back.
Jennifer, is there any way we can have like a minute?
Say it again.
I'm like so sorry, can we just have a minute, like a break or we have a 10-minute break, please?
Oh, sure. Sure, I'm gonna give you a 10-minute break, okay?
All rise for the jury.
Okay, you are on the record. And you
Your Honor, this court, upon the defense's request, instructed the prosecutors not to show emotion. You instructed the prosecutors to tell our witnesses not to show emotion, and you instructed us to let our victims know.
I don't think that's actually what I
I
said.
understand the ruling, Your Honor, I do.
Yeah.
You're concerned about influence of the jury. I take no issue with it, but it was a difficult thing. It's difficult, and we're doing it. And then to have not just the defendant, her lawyer sit there sobbing so that
I did not sob.
I just want to finish, Your Honor. I just want to finish. I think if that is the instruction, we are trying really hard to respect the court's instruction because I understand the reason for it.
Okay, I didn't tell people not to show emotion. Some of that is involuntary, but there have been times in this courtroom during trials when people will show facial expressions or things like that, or make comments. I understand this is a very emotional situation for everyone here, right? If someone was audibly sobbing in the audience, I would hope that they would exit. And as you said, the reason for it. I didn't tell anybody not to show emotion. I guess some emotion is involuntary. So I guess I'm asking what you're asking of me.
I think it should apply to both sides.
Your Honor, first of all, I was not sobbing, and this is horrific. I've
never seen this before.
It's horrific. That's why we asked the court not to play it. This is horrific. I don't know how the prosecutor. She's watched it 100 times with these witnesses. It's horrific.
You've had this video for over 2 years.
I don't know. I don't have this video. I have to go to their office to watch it.
You've seen it.
No, I haven't, because it's not necessary. It's not relevant to my client's case. We've already litigated this, but we're doing our best. We were not sobbing or making a scene in any way. All my eye makeup's still on. I checked my camera.
I'm not having an.
I need to
argument.
run
I
to
just
the
wanna make
bathroom.
sure
I need a break.
Okay, we're having a break, that's what we're doing, and you gotta keep your voices down, because
I'm sorry.
the walls are cardboard in here, so,
I'm sorry.
okay. All right, everyone here is human, right? Everyone here is human, I understand that, I'm striving really hard to give both sides a fair trial, and if people don't at least try to check themselves, to exit if it's that excruciating, which I know it is. I'm not a robot. I'm trying to keep myself from sobbing. I'll do it at 6 o'clock tonight, okay?
I appreciate that, Your Honor, that's all I'm asking.
Okay.
That's all I'm
Your
asking.
Honor, we don't have the option to leave the courtroom. We're trying our best. I promise you, we are trying our best.
All right.
Thank
all right.
you.
Everybody needs to take a deep breath. She has to go downstairs, right? And we're gonna call you right, have her come right. How long do you think the next witness is? I'm bringing lunch in for the
Next
juries.
witness is Cammy Back. I anticipate very brief questioning.
Okay, because I'm having their lunch delivered, so they don't have to commingle with people in the cafeteria.
It should be less than 30 minutes, so
Okay,
it'll work
okay,
out.
all right,
Are we gonna break then after that witness?
yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Great. I apologize.
No, it's natural, it's horrifying, it's
horrifying.
It is horrifying.
We're trying,
Okay.
We'll keep trying.
All right.
So, right. The next witness is like, it's easy, it's not emotional, it's Cammy Back. Let me see let me find out if there's any objections to exhibits. Hang on one second. I'll let the court know when they come in to, there's an objection on these ones. I'm waiting for the prosecutor. This is gonna be not emotional. No, it's, no. It's fine.
The witness is being brought up.
Okay, I wanted to let you know that my amateur media consultant, AKA my husband, says that he can hear conversations between Miss Smith and her client at the table. And I think we talked to the camera person maybe about not recording when we're not in here, but I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay.
So maybe, I don't know if you can write what you're saying to each other, or if there's
Is
a
that
way.
when we're on the record that they're hearing it, or is it when we're?
Both. Well, yeah, so.
Okay. Is there any way I can move the microphone? Do we need it?
I don't know. That is so not my department. I still own my 8-track, so.
You don't need.
You may have the microphone on the podium.
Yeah.
Your clerk has asked me to kill audio when we are in session, so I'll do that from now on.
Oh, okay, so, but when we're in session, audio's on, so I don't know.
Is this the microphone that's catching it?
I don't think that's it.
There's a microphone on the back of the podium?
Is it this one?
Yes.
I guess it would have to be.
Oh, it's this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to be able to talk to my client. I can't only write notes with her, and
Okay,
I
I guess I
can't-
don't know what to say.
When we're off session, I've been asked to turn them off, and I will.
okay, when we're on the record, can you hear? Because it sounds to me.
I can hear what's going on in the courtroom when we're on the record.
Okay, I'm asking though if you can hear myself and my client and my co-counsel talking at the table.
They're live microphones, so to pick up what's going on in here, so when we're on record.
Well, it seems like, one of the
just
things I'm
slide this
telling
over
you
then?
is just to be mindful of it.
Yeah, thank
know,
you. Okay,
know.
we will be.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sure we'll hear more if, you know. Okay.
Your Honor, just so the court's aware, the next, oh, sorry.
Oh, we're not on the record, I guess.
Sorry.
Are we on the record? We're now on the record, okay. Go ahead. We're bringing the jury in.
Next witness is Cammy Back, exhibits 24.
Cammy.
And Your Honor, just for the record, I just wanted to place in the record to make it easier. The defense has no objection to exhibits 24 through 30.
Okay.
I know the court will check with me, but I just want you to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're bringing Cammy back. Well, I guess we might want to bring the jury in before we do that, right?
We'll make sure.
Yeah. be seated. Prosecutor, who's the next witness?
Thank you, Ms. Cammy Back.
Good morning. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
And you can be seated, and then would you state your name for the record and spell your first and last name?
Cammy Back,
And spell your first and last name, please.
CAMMY BACK.
Go ahead, prosecutor.
Thank you. Ms. Back, I'm gonna ask you to keep your voice nice and loud for me, okay?
Okay,
Now, is it true, miss, that you work at a retail store that sells firearms?
yes,
And that's in Oxford, Michigan?
yes,
Okay. How long have you worked there?
4 years.
What's your current title?
Office manager?
Have you always been the office manager?
No,
As office manager, do you assist with gun sales?
yes, I do.
Okay. And what did you do before you became the office manager?
I was a counter.
I'm sorry?
I worked the counter,
Okay, the counter?
yes,
Okay, so you would deal with customers?
yes,
And you're familiar with the procedure when someone purchases a firearm?
yes,
Now, there is a specific process when somebody purchases a handgun, is that correct?
yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
So when you come in to purchase a firearm, whether it's a handgun or a long gun, we have to have your ID. You have to fill out a 4473.
What's that?
It's a federal firearms form for the
Okay.
customers. Once that is done, myself or whoever will run a NICS check on the computer.
Okay, can you tell us what that is?
That is where you send it over to, I just lost my train of thought. To the FBI, and then they take it from there.
Okay, do you know what happens with that when you
I
send
do
it to the
not.
FBI?
Nope,
So you take this information in and the customer fills out certain forms and you send that off?
yes.
Okay, and how long does that process usually take?
Sometimes it could take seconds, sometimes it could take up to 30 minutes
Okay.
or longer.
Is someone able to walk in and buy a firearm, or to buy a firearm and walk out with that gun purchase that day?
As long as they pass the background check,
As long as everything checks out?
yes,
Now, what happens if things don't check out, or if there's some kind of delay? Does that ever happen?
yes.
Okay, tell me about that.
So, if a customer is delayed, we are giving them a Brady date, which is 5 days. Within those 5 days, the NICS check could come back as a proceed, or it could come back as a denied. After 5 days, if there's no response, then we are allowed to hand the firearm over to the customer.
Okay. Do you know the circumstances in the background why somebody might be approved or denied?
I do not.
Okay. Now, when the store you work at sells a firearm, do you also provide a ATF pamphlet on handgun safety?
Yes,
Is that with every handgun purchase?
with every handgun, yes.
Okay. And tell me about that pamphlet, please. What kind of information is contained in there?
It just states, the do's and the don'ts, as far as, you know, when you buy a firearm, child safety, how to lock it, just to pretty much keep your firearm safe and out of the hands of, you know, anyone that doesn't need to have it.
Okay. And that is provided by the ATF?
Yes,
Okay. That's the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms?
yes,
All right. Does your store also provide a trigger lock safe?
yes,
Okay. And is that one of the standard forms that has to come with the firearms purchase?
yes.
Can you tell me what that is, please?
So it just, the trigger lock form, we take and we make sure we check the box, that it has the lock in the box and that it has a box that can be locked,
Okay. Now you say the lock in the box. What do you mean by that?
the trigger lock.
Okay, so when your store sells a firearm, you also provide a lock with it.
Yes,
Okay. And that's not an actual gun safe, correct? That's a smaller locking device.
yes,
All right. And that happens with every handgun sale from your store?
yes.
I'd like to direct your attention to November the 26th of 2021. Do you remember that day?
I did.
Okay. And were you working?
Yes, I was.
Did you, well, first of all, I should ask you, as office manager and someone who's been employed at the store for 4 years, every time a firearm is sold, is there a receipt kept?
Yes.
Okay. On November the 26th, 2021, did you sell a handgun to James Crumbley?
I did.
Okay. And was he there with somebody else during that purchase?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Was it an adult or was it a teenager?
Teenager.
Okay. Did you come to learn who that person was?
Later, yes.
Okay. And you came to learn that it was the defendant's 15-year-old son?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But you didn't know that at the time?
No, I did not.
Okay. Now, during the purchase between yourself and James Crumbley, did his son do anything?
Never.
Okay, so he was there present, but he didn't interact with you?
No.
I'd like to direct your attention also to June the 15th, 2021. Did James Crumbley make another purchase of a firearm that day?
That I cannot say.
Okay. If I showed you receipts, would that refresh your memory, you think?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is go through some exhibits with you. They'll be on the screen in front of you. These are all stipulated too. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. This is exhibit 24. This is, do you recognize this as a receipt from the store you work at?
Yes.
Okay. This is June the 15th, 2021. Do you see the date?
Yes.
All right. And the purchaser is James Robert Crumbley.
Yes.
And it has his address. And it has the item purchase, and that's a Cobra Classic for $180 total.
Yes.
And that's actually a 22 Derringer pistol, is that correct?
Yes.
24 has been admitted, I believe, with stipulation.
I believe that Ms. Smith was willing to stipulate to 24 through 30, is that accurate?
That's correct.
24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30 are admitted, so.
Thank you, Jen. This is exhibit 25 right here. It says pistol sales record. Can you tell us about that, please?
So each time that a pistol is sold, we have to provide the customer with a pistol record. They are given those and they are instructed to have those dropped within 10 days of the purchase.
Okay. Now, this has a description of the pistol, is that right?
Yes.
So it says, this is a Cobra Classic, we just saw the receipt for. Do you see that on there?
Yes.
Okay, and it says pistol shot in the number 2. What does that mean?
It's a 2-shot.
Okay, so it's a small handgun?
Yes.
And barrel length 2.25, is that in inches?
Yes.
Okay. It says purchase transfer date is June the 16th of 2021, whereas the receipt was June the 15th, 2021. Can you tell us what happened there?
So I believe that Mr. Crumbley may have gotten a delay on June 15th, and he had a proceed either later in the day on June 15th, or he may have gotten a proceed early morning on June 16th.
Okay, and that's because there's some kind of delay in the background information?
Yes.
Ms. Back, is it true that some handguns sold by the store actually come with their own cable locks, not just from the retailer themselves?
Yes.
Okay, so whereas on November the 26th, you provided a lock, not every handgun has to be provided a lock by your store.
Yes, it does.
Because the manufacturer gives a lock themselves.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't think that was clear, so I just want to back up for a second.
So some guns that come in from the manufacturer do not provide locks. We
Okay.
have to provide those.
Got it.
Sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. No,
Okay.
that's my fault, not yours. The 6 Hour, for example, they do not provide their own locks, is that right?
Some they do, some they do not.
Okay, and if they don't, then you would fill in that gap.
Yes.
All right. Now, this is exhibit 26. This is a receipt, James Robert Crumbley, June the 16th. And this is the Caltech P17 22 LR, total price $349. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, this is exhibit 26. And again, this is June the 16th. That's the day that he would have received the Derringer.
Yes.
You're right? Okay. And here's exhibit 27, which is the actual pistol sales record And again, purchase transfer date, June 17th of 21. So there was a delay in this purchase as well?
Yes.
Okay. And this description is, it's a 16 shot, barrel length is 3.8 inches.
Yes.
So it's bigger than the Derringer.
Yes.
Okay. Now moving on to Exhibit 28. This is from November the 26th of 21, the date we've already spoke of. So this is a receipt, total of $519.35. Again, James Robert Crumbley. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the day you recall seeing somebody with him?
Yes.
His son, okay. Do you recall if his son was with him in June, or did you not complete that purchase?
I did not complete that purchase.
Okay, that's fair. But as office manager, you can tell us that those records are from your store.
Yes.
Okay. Here's Exhibit 29. This is the pistol sales record. And this is from the Sig Sauer on November 26th, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a 15 shot and it's 3.75 inch barrel.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. And he walked out with that gun on November the 26th, 2021. Because that's the date that we have right there?
Yes.
Okay. Now, hypothetically speaking, if there was a 15-year-old who walked in your store and tried to buy a handgun, would you let him?
Absolutely not.
Okay, that would be illegal, right?
Yes.
Okay. Here's Exhibit 30. This is a portion of the firearms transaction record. I think you referred to it as a 4473. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
Okay. And was this provided, this was filled out by James Crumbley?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the purpose of this form here?
That is to keep a record for ATF for all firearms that are sold.
So there's certain boxes are checked here, and the condition of the gun is notified. In this case, it was used.
Yes.
Okay. And the purchaser has to assert certain things before he can walk out with that gun. Is that right?
Yes.
In one of those boxes, are you the actual transferee, or you are the actual buyer of the gun and it's not for somebody else?
Right.
Because it is not legal for someone to buy a gun for somebody else through your store, correct?
No, it is.
Well, that person has to come in and fill out this paperwork, that is right?
Yes.
Right. So it would not be legal for a adult, for example, to check this box that the gun is for himself and then transfer it to a child.
Yes.
Can you tell us the difference between a cable lock and a trigger lock?
So a cable lock, you have to take the slide off of the pistol and run the cable through the barrel and bring it out and to lock. Trigger lock goes directly on the trigger.
Okay. And do you recall it was provided to James Crumbley on November the 26th?
I believe it was a cable lock.
A cable lock, okay, so it looks like a rope.
Yes.
And then at the end of the rope, there is a locking mechanism,
Yes.
and then that's fastened by a key. Would that be right?
Correct. Yes.
There's some firearms that can't be secured with the cable lock versus trigger lock, or is it unique to certain guns that you need one versus the other?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Does your store always provide either a cable lock or trigger lock, or does it depend?
We provide both.
Both. Okay.
Yes.
But on this particular occasion, on November of 2021, it was a cable lock.
It was a cable lock, yes.
I have nothing further. Oh, hang on one second. Sorry. Thank you, Judge. Nothing further.
Cross. Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to go back through the exhibits. Would it be easiest if I had the prosecution go back through them if I ask, or is it easier if I just transfer it to my laptop? Okay, very easy. Okay. Can you put up exhibit number 24, please? Just so that the jury can see it. And if you want, I can put it on my computer, I have them.
But we have another flash drive, don't we, that we provided to the department?
I have them on my computer, do you want me to take the reins and use my laptop?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, we just need to switch this over then.
Okay.
Hit that button, and then I've gotta plug in my. Here's the plug out. Alright, and I'm just gonna pull up the exhibits on my laptop while Mr. Godwin plugs it in. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Smith and I represent Mrs. Crumbley. I'm gonna ask a couple of questions, and if I ask anything confusing, can you please just slow me down and let me know?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. It's not my job to confuse you. I wanna make sure you understand each question I ask.
Okay.
The first exhibit the prosecution showed, Exhibit 24, which was admitted, is a receipt for a Derringer gun. And I just want to be clear that Derringer gun was purchased by James Crumbley, correct?
I cannot say.
If you look at the receipt.
By the receipt, yes.
Okay, so by the receipt, it indicates James Crumbley purchased the weapon.
Mhm.
And
Is that
it's,
yes, I'm sorry.
and it's fair to say that Jennifer Crumbley's name does not appear anywhere on that receipt.
No.
Okay. We talked about Exhibit 25, the pistol sales record. And this was the pistol that was bought back in June of 2021. On this receipt, or I'm sorry, on this pistol sales record, James Crumbley is the person who purchased this pistol. Is that correct?
Yes.
Jennifer Crumbley's name does not appear anywhere on this pistol sales receipt, correct? No. I'm sorry?
No.
Thank you. All right, Exhibit 26 was admitted. This is a receipt from a Kel-Tec gun that was purchased, correct?
Yes.
And again, on this receipt, it indicates that James Robert Crumbley purchased the gun.
Yes.
And Jennifer Crumbley's name does not appear anywhere on that receipt.
No.
All right, I'm turning to Exhibit 27, which was admitted. This is the pistol sales receipt from the Kel-Tec that we just talked about in the prior receipt. I'm sorry, this is the sales record. The sales record indicates James Crumbley bought this gun.
Yes.
Okay, and Jennifer Crumbley's name is not listed as the purchaser, or she's not anywhere on this record, correct?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to number 28, which has been admitted. This is the receipt from the Sig Sauer that was purchased in November of 2021, correct?
Yes.
You have a direct memory of the purchase on this Sig Sauer gun, correct?
Yes.
And on this receipt, this gun was purchased by James Crumbley, correct?
Yes.
The receipt does not have Jennifer Crumbley's name.
No.
And when this gun was purchased, James Crumbley was accompanied by a teenage boy and no one else, correct?
Correct.
And you were testifying that you didn't have any interactions with the teenage boy who was with Mr. Crumbley.
Correct.
And when you saw this teenage boy with Mr. Crumbley, there was nothing about him that stood out to you as unusual or weird or something that would have raised concern about selling the gun to James Crumbley with his son, correct? No. I'm sorry, the court's making a record, so it's really important we talk one at a time. I'm not trying to cut you off in any way. I just need to make sure the record's really clear.
Sure.
So I'm just gonna re-ask, and I'm doing it just to have a clear record. When you saw Ethan Crumbley with Mr. Crumbley buying the gun, there was nothing about him that concerned you about selling the weapon to Mr. Crumbley, correct?
Correct.
And on that date, you vividly remember it was only the two of them at the gun store purchasing that weapon, correct?
Correct.
And again, on Exhibit 29, this is the pistol sales receipt. Jennifer Crumbley's name does not appear anywhere on the pistol sales receipt, correct?
Correct.
And I'm gonna open Exhibit 30, which has been admitted. This is the firearms transaction receipt. This is specific to the November gun that was purchased, the Sig Sauer, correct?
Yes.
And on this form, James Crumbley is the only adult that filled out this form, correct?
Yes.
Jennifer Crumbley's name does not appear anywhere on this form.
No.
And the information provided was all provided by James Crumbley, correct?
Correct.
And you cannot sell a weapon to a 15-year-old who walks into your store if they came in and wanted to buy a gun, correct?
Correct.
And if you don't know the answers to these questions, I can ask someone else, but I'm gonna ask you, when a parent buys a gun, a parent has a right to take their child to a shooting range, correct?
Yes.
A parent has a right to take their child hunting, correct?
Yes.
A parent has a right, when they own a gun, to allow their child to use the gun at things like a gun range or hunting or along those lines, correct?
Yes.
You testified that with the Sig Sauer gun, it did not come from the manufacturer with a lock, correct? A cable lock.
That was a used gun.
Okay, so the used gun did not come with a cable lock in the case, correct?
It may have.
If it didn't, you provided a cable lock
Yes.
to that gun.
Yes.
And in order to take a cable lock off a gun, you have to use a key, correct?
Yes.
And the key it's not just any key, it's a key specific to that cable lock, correct?
Yes.
And in Michigan, there is no, as far as you know, and if you don't know, you can tell me and I can ask another witness, there is no requirement that a person has to store a gun in a safe, correct?
Judge, I'm gonna object, that's calling for legal conclusion.
Well, it is. It is calling for legal conclusion, isn't it? I'm assuming you guys could stipulate to that at some point, but.
Either way, it's not appropriate for this.
Or, yeah.
Okay, we'll
Yes,
take
the
care of
police
that later.
officer, Yeah.
Okay. When you sell guns to people at your store, you also, you're not required to also sell them a safe for that gun, correct?
Correct.
As a precaution, if it does not come with a cable lock,
you make sure that every gun that leaves your store is sent out with a cable lock if one can be put on that gun, correct?
Cable lock or trigger lock?
Or trigger lock?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. There is not any time that you recall seeing Mrs. Crumbley at the store looking at guns, considering buying a gun, anything along those lines, correct?
Correct.
And of course, I don't expect your memory's perfect. I'm just asking by recollection, you don't recall that Mrs. Crumbley was in there.
She was not, no.
It's also not illegal for a father to bring children in or a teenager in with them to purchase a weapon, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Crumbley is not the only person who has ever been in the store purchasing a weapon with minors present, correct?
Correct.
And there is nothing that when you come to the door of the store that says minors cannot enter the store or look at what you have in terms of your stock, correct?
Correct.
May I have just a minute?
Sure.
I have no further questions, thank you.
Just very briefly. Ms. Back, I'm just gonna clear a few things up. I'm afraid I wasn't terribly clear on some things. First of all, after the shooting in Oxford High School, agents from the ATF, they came and spoke with you, would that be right?
Yes.
Okay. And ATF, that's the government agency that sort of regulates the finance or the firearms transactions.
Yes.
Okay, at least to your understanding.
Yes.
Okay. And when you, well, first of all, let me ask you this. Do you recall on November the 26th when that Sig Sauer was sold to James Crumbley, if he shopped around at all or if he went right to that gun?
He went right to that gun.
And did he make any statements about that?
That he had his eye on
Your
for
Honor,
some time.
I would object to the hearsay of the co-defendant who's not present in this trial.
It's not opposite of the truth of the matter, sir. The judge just offered to show that he went right for that gun.
Well, I guess he asked whether or not he looked around. Right? He didn't look at anything else.
No, ma'am.
Thank you, Judge. And were you able to tell if that transaction for the Sig Sauer on 11/26/21 was for cash or for credit?
It was cash.
Cash, okay. And you did that by comparing the receipts on November the 26th, and there were no credit or check transactions that they made in the amount of $519.35.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Justice.
Can I ask you, there's also an exhibit 31 and this.
Oh, that's gonna come through Agent Brandon.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you didn't have to bring this witness back. I'm gonna excuse her. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, you can step down and you're excused. Thank you. Your lunch is here. Okay, the fact that we're providing lunch doesn't mean that you can't leave the building or go out to your car and do things like that. I want to avoid any interactions in the cafeteria that could impact you. I don't want people talking to you, and I also want you to feel comfortable. All right. So your lunch is in the cafeteria. That's an hour. We'll come back at about, if you can return to the jury room at 10 after 1, your lunches are in the jury room. Don't discuss the case with anybody, don't do any research, don't go on Facebook, don't read any news on your phone or computer or otherwise, and don't discuss the case with anybody. And we'll be back at about 10 after 1. Okay?
All right, for the jury.
Okay, anybody, anything? Are you ready? Okay, you're gonna take her down, we're gonna watch the door.
Recording stopped.